welcome back. And joining us this morning, we're talking with someone who understands about the power of listening and how should you be able to do this to really open up the conversations and help people, especially for us to listen more within our Black community. So I'd like to introduce this morning Ms. Marva McIntosh. Marva, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Oh, John, I am doing well. I get to share my passion, so I'm really, really excited about that. So thank you so much for giving me this wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely. And it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking with us today. And I know recently the International Listening Association, I believe, just celebrated their 43rd anniversary. It was
Mhm.
sort of last week. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've been with the International Listening Association for about 17 years. And recently, I've been sitting on their diversity initiative community. So, the International Listening Association has been around for over 30 years, and it's a group of researchers and practitioners and people who are really passionate and are passionate about listening. So they meet every year for a conference, and that was what we had last week. We had one of our conferences, and it was a virtual. This was our second virtual conference, and I think next year we go to Germany. Hopefully the pandemic will ease up a little bit, but we have people from all over the world, so give us a chance to connect with people from different countries who are also passionate about listening and want to share this great power that we have, but we've been underestimating. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you talk about, like I say, underestimating the power of listening and what it really means. And can you talk about your own journey and how you came to, creating this environment when it comes to I love to listen.com?
Mhm. So I am a speech language pathologist by training. And about 17, 18 years ago, I was at a professional crossroads. I worked in DC public schools for the bulk of my career, and I wanted to do more. And one day, this lady sent me a thank you note. And she said, "Thank you for listening. And I hope you will always do this and share it wherever you go." And I said, "Wow, this really fits." And I went and bought a book called The Zen of Listening. And I read it. And sometimes you read a book and everything is yes, yes, yes. So that was my experience with that book. And I put it together and I said, "Okay, this is it." So I went to a writer's conference. And when I went to the writer's conference, I met this guy, John Ritter, and he had what was called I Love to Write Day, and he was sharing all his experiences. And I said, "John, you inspire me to start I Love to Listen Day." And he said, "Wow, I wish I had thought about that." He said, "Take it and run with it. Make sure it doesn't exist." So actually, this is the first International Listening Day. There are several others that are coming along, but for the last 17 years, we've been celebrating I Love to Listen Days on May the 16th. And so I get a chance to share about listening all over the world. And sometimes I get surprise responses from people. And it's really a wonderful journey because it gives me a chance to learn and to learn about something that is not an easy thing to do. So it keeps me disciplined. Every day I write or read something about listening so I can understand it at a greater depth and share it with others. So that's my journey in short.
it's,
Yeah.
it's an amazing journey, Marva, because can you talk about when it comes to International Listening Day and then that I love to listen day and really about what it means and the power of listening. And so why is that so important, especially the coming to May when we know that we're celebrating Mental Health Awareness Month?
Right, right. So I love to listen means loving through listening. You loving people through listening. There are different love languages, but here's one that you can apply. You can love others just simply by listening to them. And so each year we pick a theme, and this year that was the theme, loving through listening. Last year it was listening to our frontline workers, and different year we pick different aspect of it. So so that's what we did, and we just send the word all over using those members that I've met in the International Listening Association, and other international organizations have helped me to share the word and to say, hey, look, we're coming out of a pandemic. People are broken. We have gone through a lot. We have experienced more death than we've experienced sickness, we've experienced anxiety. We were frightened every time we think, okay, will I make it through the next 10 days? Because we heard about people who got the coronavirus and 10 days later or two weeks later, they were gone. So our anxiety capacity was really high, and it's still not totally gone, but we're trying to live with it. But that has created a need for listening. The professional mental health workers are swamped. The psychologists, the social worker, they are swamped with their patients who have regressed during this time. So therefore, we as common citizens have to pick up the slack, not that we're going to replace them, but we're going to do what is human. Right. And the human thing to do is to listen to each other. So we're just going to step up our game with listening. We've been slacking off. And I say within the Black community, we have suffered more than anyone else have suffered during this time. And because of that, we really need to figure, how can we help ourselves as a community? What can we do to support our families, to support the little ones, to support the elderly? What can we do? And I think listening is that perfect intersection where the African-American community can get together, because guess what? We have listening in our genes. We remember the oral history tradition. So listening is not new to us from African descent, because our history was shared through the oral tradition, where you had to listen keenly to be able to pass this on to the next generation. So this is not new. We've slacked off, but I think it's time for us to tighten up again and try to revive and to get our skills back in place so we can support each other and bring wholeness as much as we possibly can in our community. Yeah. So
and so you brought just a great point, Marva, because we're talking about through the traditions, and we know throughout African history, because in many situations, they weren't able to pass down things through written words. So when the tribes had to come together and listen to the elders and listen to those teachers and be able to know it intently, because it's one thing to hear. And I remember, I'm going to go to a movie when I was thinking about White Man Can't Jump. They used this thing where you could hear the music, but you didn't listen to the music. Yes. And I thought about what you just said, because it comes to our oral history often, and we hear it, we don't really listen. And so can you talk about that, what it means? Because with listening, there's a purpose behind it.
Exactly. There's a purpose. And those our ancestors made no bounds about it. The purpose was, you are responsible to carry on. You are the next leg of this relay, and you have to carry on our history. So therefore, you had to discipline yourself. We had to be a disciplined people, and train our minds to remember and to be able to keep that information, process it, and share it to the next generation. And so I think it's a wonderful privilege that we have that in our genes. Now we have fallen off, and we haven't been listening, and we have missed the experience of having that power in our community. And while the outside has been defaming us in so many ways, if we were to file defamation suit, there would be no end to it, of how they have defamed the Black community. But we have to stay strong and do what we can do within our power and within our community. And listening is that one thing no one can take away from us.
Absolutely. And recently you were part of a panel where it talked about that, Marva, about listening to our Black boys. And
Yes.
really, to say, can you expand more about that and why that was so important?
Yes. So I'm a mother of a Black son. He's an adult son now and a psychologist. And I work as a speech language pathologist for over 30 years. I've been working as a speech language pathologist. And I would say over 85% of my clients, of the students, were Black boys.
Mm.
And I have had the privilege of listening to these young ones. And because I'm a speech language pathologist, I work with students who are struggling to feel understood and to be heard. And just by listening, giving them an extra minute or two, just give them some wait time, just pause and listening, and let them struggle and share their story, because everyone has a story. It could be a long story, it could be a short story, it could be a one-sentence story. Everyone has a story. We have this drive to tell. And it is just amazing. It is the most amazing thing to witness a youngster feeling understood. It is, I feel valued. I feel good. I feel heard. And to see them change almost like from caterpillar to a butterfly experience right in front of your eyes, when this young child who has been deemed as not doing this, not doing that, not doing anything that we typically want them to do. But at the moment when they felt heard, you saw almost like a transformation. It was like magical, a different person in front of your eye. And that was a joy that I experienced, and I want others to experience as well. Show me an angry boy, and I will show you a young man who is feeling unheard and misunderstood.
Mm. And you made such a great point, Marva, because especially in just in talking in our schools, the people we've talked to as well, is a universal thought, especially around Black parents, is that we feel that a lot of our Black children are not being listened to in schools, and they're trying to create more safe spaces. And so, is that something that we need even more so in our schools? Because when Black children are seeing, the all the tragedies that are taking place on television and things they see in the media and social media and what have you, are we doing more? What can we do more to create those kind of spaces where young Black children can be heard?
Yeah, so we need to rally in our school system and be adamant about asking for the teaching of listening, having the teachers to take courses on listening, and having the students as well to take courses on listening, because many of the teachers don't listen because no one really taught them how. In our traditional school system, we teach people to speak, to read, and to write, but we tell them to listen. We don't teach people. So many people don't know how, and we had poor role models. And from those poor role models, we have been passing on those poor listening habits. And so I would recommend that we train our teachers and our administrators how to listen, and also concurrently train our young ones how to listen, because it's the root of many successful experiences that our young ones are missing out on, because there are some myths about listening. We think that good communication is about articulating and about talking, and actually good communication is both, with a heavy nod towards listening. Because some people are saying that we know that there needs to be more listening than speaking for good communication to go on. And some people say 57%, some people say 80% using that 80-20 rule. But whatever the percentage is, we need to listen more than we speak.
Absolutely. That's the reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And so
Yeah.
it's amazing because when we think about that, because we live in a world where people value expression so much, but at the
Yes.
same token, and I think you made a very good point, Marva, when we talk about we weren't raised to know how to attentively listen, use
Yes.
active listening in order to respond. Often when it comes to conversations, a lot of it comes down to, well, once this person speaks, then I'm instantly going to speak without really, reciprocating what was said to them. And that's not just in education environments, it's also in the office, it's also in relationships. And we say that a lot of the reasons that people struggle with having successful relationships is because they haven't mastered the art of listening.
That is so true. And interestingly enough, listening is the foundation of all communication skills. So if your listening skills are off, your speaking skills, your writing skills, your reading skills are going to be totally off, as well as your relationship, because it is a foundation. But the interesting thing about listening that is different from the other skills is that it is foundation. And we know that foundation is not showy. Foundation is underground. It's underground. When you build a building, they dig down and they set that foundation. And because it is not a showy skill, it gets ignored and neglected, because now everybody, we want to be broadcasting and we want to be out there, but no one wants to do that foundation work. But that's where the essence of communication is. It's in the foundation. And when students go to school, most of what they do is listening, actually. And so if you're listening to learn, skills are not intact, your learning is going to be thrown off. If you're listening for relationships, because we listen for two things, one for learning and the other for relationship, but they're both listening. It's the same set of brain skill. And if that's off, you're going to struggle through school, or you're going to struggle through life. We know some very bright people who don't have an appreciation for listening. And so they struggle with relationships. And we know people who are very good with relationships, but they may have difficulty processing and what have you. But once you get those two pieces together, success is your game, because you would have mastered that significant foundation that we require for success. But the other thing on top of it is our listening attitude. Yes, in our community in particular, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yes. And that is the message that we have been sent, that, you have to speak up in order to be heard. And if you don't speak up, you're not going to be heard. And that's a poor message to send, and it sends an unhealthy attitude towards listening and understanding. So we need to go back and send that attitude that listening is important. Listening needs to be a core value. And so that cultural myth, or that cultural lie, I would say, that say the squeaky wheel gets the oil, we need to put that behind us. Post-pandemic, we need to put that. Go ahead.
No, that's a great point it just made, because I think sometimes there's been this call for, especially in the Black community, where it's been that we need to be more vocal about the struggles we deal with, whether it, mental health, we're assuming our physical health, or dealing with racism and other entities. But you just brought something that really, I think we don't really think about that often, is, instead of just always saying, hey, these are the struggles I deal with, is also we need to learn that listening, because that crosses all cultural lines and so social lines as well.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It crosses all boundaries, because one of the things I like to say is, as a therapist, we look for skills that we call transferable skills. So I will teach you to use a word here, and we will go into another setting and have you to use the same word, and we go to another setting and have you to use the same word, and that we call that transferable skill. Listening is the most powerful transferable skill because once you learn it, you can use it in your intimate relationships. You can use it in your working relationships. You can use it in your learning relationships. You can use it in all of your relationships. So that is one of the most powerful thing about listening. And I just like that because it's not a wasted skill. You know, something we
Hmm.
learned somewhere and we can't transfer it anywhere else. It's just good for that particular setting, but not listening. Once you learn to listen and you learn to have a healthy attitude towards listening, that there's power in this thing, then you can take it across all boundaries. And once you start listening, people are going to think you're smarter than you are.
Mm.
Because, yes,
That's a
because
great
people,
point.
listening is so freeing. It's just amazing. And all you have to do is just listen. People are starving for listeners in their lives. People don't have listeners in their lives. So once you show up as that listener, people will think you're so amazing when you're just regular. You're just a regular, yeah, you're just a regular person. So I'm saying all that to say, it is possible, it is possible for us to rekindle that gene in our community. It really is possible for us to do it and to hold others who work with us, who are from outside of our community and within our community, hold them accountable.
Right. That's a
You
good.
know,
Yeah, because you talk
yeah,
about holding people accountable in order, especially for whether it's elected officials, those administrations and others in authority, why it's important for them to listen as well. I was doing a recent interview where, especially in the workplace, a lot of people are leaving, a lot of employees, because they feel they aren't being listened to. And
ex-
that's a concept that also that supervisors and other leaders need to apply as well.
exactly. Excuse me. And there are quite a few books that are coming out now on listening and leadership, and books and workshops and podcasts and what have you, that in that whole leadership arena, I know we will hear politicians, lawmakers, and high power leaders when once they go into their profession, their position, they'll say, "I'm going to do a listening campaign," or "I'm going to do a listening tour."
Mhm.
And they will, so say for example, a new superintendent comes to town and he's like, okay, I'm going to go and listen to the parents, I'm going to listen to the stakeholders, the principals, the teachers, the mayor. So going to go around to all the stakeholders in the school system and listen. But sometimes I'm not sure that that superintendent had a listening training,
Mm,
and he's not just saying it for PR purposes, he or
right.
she. Sometimes, it's a good word to say, I conducted a listening tour or what have you. But in terms of what is the call to action? What did you hear
Mm,
from your stakeholders? What did you hear? And what are you going to put into action? Are you just going to put into action what the mayor's office asks you to do? Or are you going to listen to the parents? Because there's a whole thing on status and listening, who we listen to, who we respond to, and what have you. So we need to be able to hold, or lawmakers, what are the laws that we want to affect our African American community? I read recently we're in Oakland, California, where they finally have they have formalized a way of listening to the community members regarding reparation.
yes. Hmm.
So you read that article? Yeah,
Yes, I
that was
did.
quite
Yes.
interesting, right?
Yes.
They want to hear from the citizens, what does reparation means to you? And that's a start, and that's a brilliant start. because if you don't know what reparation means to the citizen, your knee-jerk response would be no reparation, not even knowing what reparation means. So I hope that that will be a wonderful model that will spread throughout the other states in terms of just listening to the people in the community. This is what we want. And then what does it mean to you?
Absolutely. And that is the thing, is for to be able to listen to the citizens, listen, like you said, listen to the stakeholders and understand their needs and ascertain their needs as opposed to just, well, here's my agenda, here's my platform, we'll listen, and that's all I'm going to do. And the people listen to them. It should be the other way around. And finally, recently you had a scholarship ceremony or a register ceremony for high school students, and who won those scholarships for listening as well. Can you talk a bit about that as well, Marva?
Yeah, so for the last 11 years, I've been giving this award. It's called Exemplary Listening Award. And the reason why I call it Exemplary Listening Award is there's no perfect listener. Listening is hard work, because they say we forget 50% of what we hear right afterwards. And in 3 days, we only remember maybe 10% of what we hear. So there's no perfect listener. We're all on this journey. It's a listening journey. And so one of my core beliefs is that we reward that which we value. If we don't value it, we don't reward it. And so I'm just setting the pace, and I have the teachers to nominate the student who they consider to be that listener in the school year. Yes. And so I give that Exemplary Listening Award. So I've been doing that for the last 11 years. And it's just one of the highlights of my year to be able to give a student a listening award. So thank you for asking me about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's important because it rewards students who, I think, shows the importance of getting students to understand at an early age that, listening is a reward within itself, because not only of the knowledge you obtain, but also that it strengthens, like you say, it builds relationships. And that's something we really need in a time like this, especially where, even though we're still coming out of the pandemic and people are still maybe a bit divided, and being able to have forums and platforms where people can listen to one another and respond, I think we will see a more fruitful society. We'll see more fruitful relationships, whether it's in the office, in personal relationships, and just overall. And I think what you're doing, Marva, is so special and so unique, as what we definitely need is to listen more. Can you plug your website and tell people where they can find out more information about you?
Okay, my website is ilovetolisten.com. And you can find me on Facebook, Marva Shand McIntosh. I'm on Facebook a lot, talking about listening. And so invite you to just get on there. And my email is marva451@gmail.com. I love to listen, and I just love to listen. So just if you say listening, I'm gonna jump. just like you invited me to say something about listening, and I was more than happy to do so. So I have an affirmation, and it can be found on the website. And I would like to share that with your audience. It's just short. It's called the Listening Affirmation, and it says, may you always have one true listener in your life, and may you always strive to be one true listener in someone else's life.
That is beautiful, Marva. And that's what we all need to strive to be, is be able to have that, because just in that alone, it creates connection, it creates community. And that's what we desperately need in times like this. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Marva McIntosh, for that affirmation, and also for what you're doing as well. And we will make sure to promote this and let more people know that being able to go to your website and learn strategies for listening, because it's something, again, a universal principle that everyone can apply in their lives. So thank you so much for taking time to talk with us this morning.
Thank you so much, John. I truly, truly appreciate being here, and success to you and your listeners.
Absolutely. And for Marva McIntosh, make sure to check her out, her website, ilovetolisten.com. Make sure to find her on her Facebook page as well, and find out more how you can apply strategies to listen. This is the PD16 Perspective interview with Marva McIntosh. We'll be right back.